The sun broke gently over the sleepy town of Maplewood, Oregon, casting warm rays over its manicured lawns and cozy houses. It was one of those peaceful summer mornings where nothing ever seemed to go wrong. The town was preparing for its annual Community Heroes Day, a cheerful event where families gathered at Maplewood Park to meet local firefighters, EMTs, and the police force, including the town's highly regarded K-9 unit. By 10 a.m., the park was buzzing with energy. Children screamed with laughter as they jumped in bounce houses and lined up for snow cones. Parents chatted under tents, sipping lemonade. Officers in uniform handed out stickers and badges to little ones who proudly wore them on their shirts. A few K-9 demonstrations drew gasps and applause as the trained dogs performed flawless obedience routines and simulated criminal apprehensions. Among the attendees was 3-year-old Lily Hart, a quiet, observant girl with sandy blonde curls and wide, thoughtful eyes. Clutching her mother's hand, she stood at the edge of the crowd, more interested in watching than participating. Her mom, Julia, had brought her mostly to meet the doggies, hoping it would help Lily open up more around people. But Lily wasn't like the other kids. She didn't scream with excitement or run toward the balloon animals. She was silent, thoughtful, and something about this day, this moment, felt different to her. Even if she couldn't explain why. At exactly noon, Officer Daniels took the mic. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said proudly, "allow me to introduce someone very special. This is Zeus, one of our recently retired K-9 officers. He's been with us through 10 years of service, helped track missing persons, stop break-ins, and protect all of us. Today, he's enjoying retirement, but we wanted him here so you could all meet a real hero." As Zeus was led into the circle, the crowd clapped warmly. He was a powerful, dignified German shepherd, graying slightly around the muzzle, but still alert and proud. His amber eyes scanned the crowd, his tail slowly wagging. Kids giggled and pointed. Some asked if they could pet him. Daniels nodded. But not Lily. Her hand gripped her mother's tighter. Her breathing changed. Her wide eyes locked on Zeus, not with fear. With recognition. She took a step forward, then another. Her mother knelt beside her. "Lily, do you want to go pet the dog?" Lily shook her head slowly, then whispered something that sent chills down Julia's spine. "That's Max." Julia frowned, confused. "What, sweetie?" "That's Max," Lily repeated louder. "He saved me in the woods." Julia blinked. "The woods?" Lily nodded firmly, eyes never leaving Zeus. He barked, and the man ran away. Nearby, Officer Daniels overheard and raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me, ma'am. Did she say saved her in the woods?" Julia felt her stomach twist. She did. But I'm not sure what she's talking about. Daniels looked at Lily. "Do you know this dog, sweetheart?" Lily nodded again. "He stayed with me. He's my Max." A hush began to fall over those standing near. Julia's mind reeled. Could Lily be talking about that strange day months ago, during their hike near Timber Ridge? The day Lily went missing for nearly half an hour, only to be found unharmed, sitting quietly on a rock, as if nothing had happened? She had mumbled about a dog who stayed with her then, but everyone had assumed she'd made it up. There had been no dog reported. No one had seen anything. It was written off as a wandering toddler and a wild imagination. But now, staring at Zeus, Lily's voice was calm, clear, and chilling. More officers turned to look. The crowd quieted. Zeus, too, had stopped wagging his tail. His ears perked up, and he stepped forward, sniffing the air in Lily's direction. Daniels crouched next to him, watching closely. "You sure about this, sweetheart?" Lily looked up. "He was there. I was scared. He barked loud so the bad man would go away, and he stayed with me until Mommy came." The officer's heart sank. That wasn't imagination. That was memory, Doc. And if she was right, something far bigger had just been uncovered. Officer Daniels remained crouched beside Zeus, watching the little girl as if she'd just uttered the secret to something long forgotten. Around them, the noise of the park had dimmed. Families kept enjoying the day, but a small circle of officers and concerned parents had begun to form around Lily and her mother. Julia, still kneeling beside her daughter, tried to smile, but her heart pounded. "Lily," she said gently, "do you remember when you got lost in the woods that day?" Lily nodded without hesitation. "I saw a man. He was looking at me from the trees." Julia inhaled sharply. "Why didn't you tell me that before?" "I did," Lily whispered. "But you thought he was pretend, like the dog." Officer Daniels' eyes narrowed. "Tell me what happened, Lily. Anything you remember." The little girl looked at Zeus again. "He barked. The man ran. Then he laid down next to me so I wouldn't be scared. I hugged him. He had a shiny thing here," she added, tapping her own chest. "It made a little jingle." Daniels looked down at Zeus's collar. The retired officer still wore his K9 badge. "Do you remember what the man looked like?" Daniels asked. Lily frowned. "He had a hat, and he was hiding behind trees. He was walking quiet, like he didn't want me to hear. But Max heard him." The officer froze. It wasn't just the vividness of the memory, it was the precision. Daniels stood up slowly and waved over another officer. "Get me the Timber Ridge report from 6 months ago. Missing child. Suspicious person. I need everything. Now." Julia's hands trembled. "I thought she just wandered off the trail. We found her sitting by that rock. Do you remember? I called out, and she came running, like nothing happened." "I remember," Daniel said. "We logged it as a low-risk lost child case. No sign of anyone else around. No dog in the area. But Zeus was on patrol that day. He went crazy near the North Trail and barked for minutes straight. We thought he was reacting to a wild animal. We never found anything. He turned back to Lily. Sweetheart, are you sure it was this dog? Lily didn't hesitate. He looked at me just like that when I cried. I remember his eyes. Zeus stepped forward, lowering his head gently toward Lily. She reached out and placed her small hand on his fur. He licked her hand once and stayed still. It was like a memory was passing between them. Julia was stunned. This can't just be coincidence. Another officer returned with a tablet. Here's the report. Child missing 32 minutes. Found unharmed, no visible injuries. Scarf found near the base of a tree didn't belong to the child. Believed to be unrelated at the time. Daniels nodded. The scarf. We bagged it, but never sent it for testing. We didn't think it was connected. He turned to Julia. Can I get Lily's permission to show her a picture of the scarf? Just in case. Julia nodded, looking down at her daughter. It's okay, sweetie. Just tell the truth. The officer scrolled through the evidence photos and held up one. Lily leaned in and studied it. That was around the tree I hid behind. She said softly. The man dropped it. Max barked, he dropped it and ran. Daniels looked at his fellow officer. Get that scarf tested. No. Then he turned to Lily again, eyes kind. You're very brave. You just helped us a lot. Lily smiled. I just told the truth. Julia stared at Zeus. You saved her. And no one even realized. Daniels nodded slowly. He did more than we ever gave him credit for. And for the first time in years, the retired dog looked almost proud again. A little girl's tiny voice had reawakened a long cold case, and maybe, just maybe, brought them one step closer to something far bigger. Officer Daniels sat in his cruiser just outside the precinct, reviewing the Timber Ridge report on his tablet. The cool hum of the air conditioning did little to settle his nerves. His thoughts kept circling back to Lily, her voice, her certainty, and that moment Zeus stepped toward her. The connection had been undeniable. It wasn't imagination. It was memory got back inside. Officers were pulling old files out of storage. Everything from that day, body cam footage, patrol logs, even 911 calls, was being reviewed again. For Daniels, it wasn't just reopening a cold incident. It was personal. He'd handled Zeus since he was a pup. The dog had an uncanny instinct, always alert, always focused. And yet, after that Timber Ridge patrol, Zeus had seemed unsettled for days, pacing more than usual, sleeping less. Daniels thought retirement would calm him, but maybe Zeus had known there was unfinished business. Back then, Zeus had reacted strongly to something along the trail. He had barked and pulled Daniels toward the northern clearing, but there was no visual confirmation of a threat. When backup arrived and no one else was found, it was deemed a false alarm. Daniels hadn't thought to connect it to Lily's brief disappearance. No one had. Now, with Lily's clear recollection of events, Daniels realized something. Zeus hadn't failed his duty. The humans had failed to understand what he was trying to say. Across town, Julia sat with Lily on their porch, cradling a mug of tea she wasn't drinking. She stared at her daughter, who was busy coloring a picture of a dog, big, proud, and wearing a shiny gold badge on its collar. Max, she had labeled it. Not Zeus, not the dog. Max, as if she had always known him by name. "Sweetheart," Julia said softly, "why didn't you tell Mommy about all this before?" Lily glanced up, thoughtful. "I did. I said the dog barked, and the man ran. You said it was just a story." Julia's heart sank. Of course she had. It made sense then, a 3-year-old's explanation for something she couldn't articulate. No injuries, no trauma, and a healthy child found within half an hour. It hadn't seemed worth panicking over, but now it was horrifying. A text message buzzed on Julia's phone. It was from Officer Daniels. "Can we talk tonight?" Bring Lily. We may have found something. That evening, they met at the station. Daniels welcomed them into a quiet room, where Zeus lay resting on a mat, tail thumping when Lily walked in. She knelt down and hugged him gently. We pulled more from. That day, Daniels began. There was a scarf found near the tree line, deep enough in the woods that we didn't think it belonged to Lily. But she says the man dropped it when Zeus barked. Julia nodded slowly. She said that this morning too. "We've sent it for DNA testing now," he continued. "Back then, we didn't think it was relevant. But the scarf was adult-sized and had some faint bloodstains. We think it might belong to someone who fled the area. It's now logged as evidence. What if it's just random?" Julia asked, worry still in her voice. Daniels hesitated. "Could be, but here's the thing. That same week, there were reports from 2 nearby counties, attempted child abductions. Same suspect description, male, ball cap, seen near parks and hiking trails. And in each case, he vanished before police arrived." Julia went pale. "You think that's who Lily saw?" Daniels nodded. "We think Zeus scared him off before he could do anything worse. Lily was the one that got away, and we never even knew it." Lily looked up from petting Zeus. "He didn't let the man take me. He stayed." Julia knelt beside her, tears in her eyes. "You're so brave." Daniel swallowed the lump in his throat. "Your daughter might have just helped identify serial predator." And as Lily wrapped her arms around Zeus again, the old dog let out a quiet, contented sigh, like he knew justice was finally stirring awake. Late that night, Officer Daniels sat in the precinct's evidence room, the silence broken only by the low hum of fluorescent lights overhead. The scarf was now in a sealed evidence bag on the metal table in front of him. It looked ordinary, blue flannel, slightly worn, with what appeared to be a tear near one end. He'd seen it once before, 6 months earlier, when it was found, draped across a bush near the Timber Ridge Trail. At the time, no one had thought it was connected to Lily's disappearance. But now, everything was different. The DNA lab had already placed a rush order on it. It would take a couple of days, but Daniels had a sick feeling in his gut that the result wouldn't be random. Meanwhile, Lily's words echoed in his mind. He barked loud so the bad man would go away. It wasn't fantasy. It was a description of an event. A moment burned into a young child's memory. And she had described Zeus down to the badge he wore on his collar, something the public wouldn't have known. Zeus lay beside him now, his breathing slow and steady, his eyes occasionally open to glance around, ears still perked despite retirement and age. Daniels reached down and stroked his thick fur. "You did good, buddy," he whispered. "We just didn't see it back then." As Daniels stared at the dog, he remembered the patrol that day. Zeus had picked up a scent, something sharp, something urgent. He had barked and pulled hard toward the northern ridge, but Daniels had pulled him back, assuming it was a raccoon or coyote. He'd never forgive himself for that. The next morning, Julia brought Lily back to the station as promised. Lily was carrying a drawing, her and Max, standing in the woods under the sun. Daniels took it with a smile and pinned it to the wall behind his desk. "Lily," he said, "we're trying to figure out who that man was. Do you remember anything else?" Lily thought hard, then said, "He had a scratch on his hand, and he smelled like smoke, not like a campfire, like dirty smoke." Daniels jotted the note. A scratch, possibly from Zeus or the underbrush. Smoke, maybe he was a smoker or had been near a fire recently. She was providing more clues than most adults in witness reports. Later that afternoon, Daniels received a call from the neighboring county sheriff's office. They had recently reopened 2 attempted abduction cases, and both had similar details. The suspect was male. In his 40s, thin build, wore a dark hat, and always disappeared before police arrived. In one case, a witness had noted a limp in his left leg. Daniels immediately remembered something else from that day in Timber Ridge. Paw prints from Zeus, and deeper indentations in the dirt, like a dragging foot. It hadn't been relevant back then. Now it might be everything. With this information, officers pieced together a profile. The man was possibly transient, moved between counties, and chose remote areas to approach his targets. He had likely spotted Lily when she slipped. Slightly off the trail, a moment of pure chance, and then Zeus appeared, not part of any official search, not deployed specifically for Lily, just a working dog on routine patrol, picking up a scent, reacting to something no one else saw. Zeus hadn't just found Lily. He had saved her. Later that evening, as Daniels took Zeus home for a much-deserved rest, he paused and looked down at the old dog. "You never stopped being a cop, did you?" Zeus gave a soft, satisfied grunt, head resting gently on the passenger seat. God, it was clear no. Even in his final patrol days, Zeus had carried out one last mission, a mission no one had understood at the time, until a tiny voice told the truth no one else could see. 2 days later, the call came. Daniels was pouring coffee at his desk when his phone buzzed. A caller ID flashed the number for the state crime lab. He set the mug down slowly and answered, his voice steady but tight with anticipation. "Officer." "Daniels." "Detective," the voice said. "You're going to want to sit down." Daniels didn't sit. He just listened. "The DNA on that scarf matches a man named Tyler Grange. He's in the national database, wanted in Nevada and Idaho for attempted child abductions. Same pattern. Same Mo. He's never been caught. Until now." "Daniels." Jaw tightened. So it was him. He was at Timber Ridge. Without a doubt, your dog scared him off. And Lily? She's the first one to identify the incident clearly. As Daniels hung up, his hand trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of what this meant. Zeus had protected Lily from a predator no one even knew was there. That scarf had sat in evidence for 6 months, overlooked and untested, while Tyler Grange moved freely. Now, thanks to one child's voice and one dog's action, the puzzle was finally coming together. He stood up and walked to the break room, where Zeus was lying peacefully beside his water bowl. The dog raised his head slightly as Daniels. They got him, Daniels said. They finally know. Zeus let out a low, satisfied groan and laid his head back down, eyes half closed. It was as if he understood. News of the DNA match spread quickly. Within hours, the local paper released a headline. 3-year-old identifies retired canine, solves cold case involving serial predator. By that evening, the story was national. Cable news anchors praised the bravery of Lily and the heroic instincts of Zeus. Interviews poured in. Journalists asked for exclusive coverage. Offers came from producers looking to turn it into a documentary. But for Julia, the attention wasn't what mattered. What mattered was that her daughter had been believed and saved. She spoke to the media only once, holding Lily close on her lap as cameras rolled. "You don't expect your child to be part of something like this," she said. "But I thank God for that dog. He was where he needed to be when it mattered most." Zeus became an instant celebrity. Fans sent cards, toys, treats, and hand-drawn posters from children across the country. One little boy from Arizona mailed a stuffed version of Zeus, complete, with a tiny badge on the collar. Another girl sent a thank-you letter that simply read, "You're my favorite hero." The department was overwhelmed. Daniels kept a growing stack of cards and drawings in his office. But none meant more than the one Lily had given him. A picture of Zeus barking at a shadowy figure in the woods, protecting a girl in a pink dress. Meanwhile, the manhunt for Tyler Grange intensified. The newly tested DNA had given law enforcement a fresh lead. A surveillance photo captured him leaving a gas station in Montana. Police believed he was still moving between remote towns, likely unaware that one piece of lost clothing had just unraveled his entire cover. Inside the Maplewood precinct, Daniels stood before his team. "We missed something important 6 months ago," he said, "but Zeus didn't, and Lily didn't forget." That little girl remembered what most of us dismissed. And because she spoke up, we have a name, we have DNA, and we have a shot at justice. Applause filled the room. Daniels looked down at Zeus, resting quietly beside him. "To Zeus," he said, "still on duty, even in retirement." The room echoed his toast. And outside the station, people had begun to gather, not to protest, not in fear, but in admiration. Children pressed their noses to the windows, hoping to glimpse the dog whose bark had echoed louder than anyone's shout. Maplewood had always been a quiet, tight-knit town, the kind of place where everyone knew your name and waved from the porch. But now, its quiet streets were pulsing with energy, attention, and pride. The local police department had become the heart of a national story, and the reason was both extraordinary and humbling. A retired police dog and a 3-year-old girl had cracked open a case that grown investigators had missed. Outside the precinct, crowds were forming daily. Parents brought children holding signs that read, "Thank you, Zeus," and "Lily, you're our hero." A small flower memorial had even begun to grow under the station's flagpole, not for someone lost, but for someone honored. Zeus, once just a working dog among many, was now considered a local legend. Inside, Lily sat curled up next to Zeus, gently brushing his fur with a tiny pink hairbrush. She whispered softly to him, the way a child might tell secrets to a favorite. Stuffed animal. Zeus didn't move much these days. Age and service had slowed him. But when Lily was near, his ears perked just a little more. His eyes opened just a little wider. Julia watched from a distance, holding back tears. She'd taken the week off work to focus on Lily, and though her daughter had been thrust into the spotlight, she was handling it with grace far beyond her years. "Do you think Max misses the woods?" Lily asked suddenly, looking up at her. "Mom." Julia knelt beside her. "Maybe, but I think he's happy being with you." Lily smiled, resting her head on Zeus's side. Officer Daniels stood in the hallway, watching them silently. In his hands was an envelope, an invitation from the governor's office. A formal recognition ceremony was being organized at the state capitol, and Zeus and Lily were the guests of honor. But Daniels wasn't sure if all that pressure was right for a toddler and an aging dog. Still, something told him they'd rise to the moment just as they had before. Later that day, the town held a rally in Maplewood Park, where it all began. Hundreds showed up. News vans parked in a neat row. Satellite dishes pointed skyward. A temporary stage had been set up, adorned with red, white, and blue bunting. Children waved tiny flags and wore K9 Hero stickers on their shirts. Daniels took the podium first. "When Zeus joined our force, I knew he was special. But I never imagined that years later, after retirement, he'd still be saving lives. And I certainly never imagined a 3-year-old would be the one to help us understand what he did." The crowd applauded. Then, holding Lily's hand gently, Julia helped her up onto the stage. Lily wore a yellow sundress and tiny cowboy boots. She looked out over the crowd nervously, then down at Zeus sitting just below her. She raised the microphone with both hands and said softly, "Thank you, Max." That was it. 2 words, simple, pure, and true. The crowd erupted into applause and tears. Even the stern-faced officers wiped their eyes. Julia hugged her daughter tightly, overwhelmed by the emotion of the moment. Back at the precinct that evening, Daniels opened an email from the FBI. Tyler Grange had been spotted again, this time on a wildlife camera near a campground in Wyoming. A task force was forming. He wasn't going to stay hidden much longer, but for now, the focus was on something else: hope, community, and a moment of shared triumph. People across the country had sent in donations for Lily's future therapy and education. Others asked how they could honor Zeus. The department set up a scholarship fund in his name for kids who wanted to work with animals or law enforcement. As the sun set over Maplewood, Daniels watched Lily and Zeus resting together on the front steps of the station, the town's smallest hero beside its most loyal protector. And in that stillness, the bond between them felt bigger than words, louder than a bark, and stronger than fear. 3 weeks later, the town of Maplewood woke to breaking news. Fugitive Tyler Grange arrested in Utah after anonymous tip. After months of eluding authorities, the man whose scarf had linked him to Lily's near abduction, and potentially others, had been captured in a small Utah town. A retired ranger recognized him from a news segment about Zeus and Lily and quietly alerted authorities. Grange had been working odd jobs under a fake name, hiding in plain sight. Within 48 hours, he was extradited to Oregon to stand trial. The courtroom was packed the day the proceedings began. Reporters filled the back rows. Officers lined the walls. Local citizens, once disconnected from the justice system, showed up wearing shirts with Zeus's face on them. It wasn't just a trial. It was a reckoning. Julia sat in the front row, clutching Lily's hand tightly. Daniel sat nearby with Zeus lying at his feet, calm but alert, as if he understood the gravity of the moment. The defense tried to minimize the charges, claimed there was no proof Grange had intended to harm Lily, only that he may have passed through the woods But the prosecution had built a strong case. The DNA match, the suspicious circumstances, and most powerful of all, Lily's clear memory. Everyone held their breath as she was gently led to the stand. The judge allowed Zeus to accompany her, given his role and her young age. As Lily climbed into the seat, Zeus settled beside her, his head resting near her foot. His presence gave her confidence. Julia's heart pounded. Daniels whispered, "She can do this." The courtroom quieted. "Lily," the prosecutor said gently, "can you tell us what you remember from that day?" The little girl looked around nervously. Then her eyes landed on Zeus. She reached down and touched his ear. "I was walking in the woods," she said softly. "I saw a man hiding behind the trees. He was watching me." Her voice quivered slightly, but she continued. "Then Max barked. Loud, the man ran away. Max stayed with me until my mommy came." The courtroom was silent. Some jurors wiped their eyes. Others leaned forward, visibly moved. "And is Max here today?" the attorney asked. Lily nodded and pointed. "That's him. He saved me. Do you see the man who is hiding?" Lily looked across the courtroom, where Tyler Grange sat, pale and stone-faced. She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "That's him." Grange shifted uncomfortably. His attorney leaned in, whispering furiously. The judge asked for order. Julia held her breath. In closing arguments, the prosecutor hammered the point home. A man thought he could prey on the vulnerable. But he didn't count on two things: a loyal dog, trained to protect, and a brave little girl who never forgot. After a short deliberation, the jury returned guilty. That on all counts. The courtroom erupted, not in cheers, but in tears and relief. Officers nodded solemnly. Julia buried her face in her hands. And Zeus? He stood up, looked at Lily, and let out a single bark that echoed across the room like a salute. The judge smiled. "I think we all know who the real hero is." Later, outside the courthouse, cameras flashed as Lily sat on the courthouse steps, Zeus beside her. A reporter asked what she felt now that the bad man was gone. Lily didn't hesitate. "I feel safe." And then she added, "Max made me brave." Daniels leaned against a railing nearby, arms folded, heart full. Zeus had done more than his duty. He had protected a child, led to a predator's capture, and helped give a voice to someone so small, yet so powerful. Justice had been served. But even more, a child's truth had triumphed over silence. Spring arrived early in Maplewood. That year, the cherry blossoms bloomed brighter, the sun lingered longer, and the town itself felt a little lighter, as if a collective weight had been lifted. Though Tyler Grange was behind bars, and justice had been served, what lingered most in people's hearts wasn't the verdict. It was the story of the bond between a little girl and an old dog. Zeus's name had become synonymous with courage. Lily's face graced magazine covers under headlines like "The Girl Who Spoke for the Voiceless" and "Tiny Witness, Tremendous Strength." Julia had initially feared the media attention, but with Daniel's help, she'd managed to set firm boundaries. Interviews were limited. Donations for Lily's therapy and education were placed in a protected trust. Lily still lived a normal life, if anything, one more filled with playdates, coloring books, and wagon rides than before. But Zeus was slowing down. His joints ached more, his eyes clouded. He didn't move with the same urgency. The long days at the station were behind him now. He spent most of his time on Julia and Lily's porch, resting under a cozy blanket with a bowl of fresh water nearby. Kids from the neighborhood stopped by to pet him. Some drew pictures and left them taped to the porch rail. Lily never left his side. One evening, Julia found her curled next to Zeus, whispering a story about princesses and castles. "In this story, Max is a knight," Lily said. "He saves." Everyone. Julia smiled and tucked them both in under the blanket. That night, as the stars blinked above Maplewood, Zeus passed away peacefully in his sleep, his head resting against Lily's small hand. The news spread quickly the next morning. Flags in town were lowered. The police department held a silent procession. Officers lined the streets. The town bell rang once, low and solemn. Zeus was buried behind the precinct in a small memorial garden, next to the K-9 training field where he had once trained. A bronze statue was commissioned, showing him standing tall beside a little girl, his leash held loosely in her tiny hand. Lily visited the statue often. She didn't cry. She smiled. "Max is still here," she told a reporter months later. "He lives in my heart now." Years passed. Lily grew older. Her story stayed alive, told in schools, read in children's books, studied in criminal justice programs. A scholarship in Zeus's name helped dozens of students become K-9 handlers, therapists, and trauma counselors. One day, when Lily was 10, she was invited to speak at a national law enforcement conference. She stood on stage in a navy dress and sighed, "I was scared once, but my dog showed me I could be brave. Now, I help other kids feel brave too." She sat down to a standing ovation. Daniels, now retired, stood in the wings and wiped away a tear. He had watched this tiny voice grow into a powerful one, not just for herself, but for every child who had ever felt helpless, every survivor who had ever been silenced. Julia, sitting beside him, whispered, "Zeus would be proud." And he would have been, because this wasn't just a story about a police dog saving a girl. It was a story about how that girl saved others. About how truth can come from the smallest places. About how loyalty never fades, even after the leash is gone. At the edge of the stage, there was a single photo in a frame. Lily and Zeus, side by side in the courtroom, a tiny hand on his fur, a soft bark echoing into history. A reminder that sometimes the most heart-stopping moments are the ones that teach us to listen to the quietest voices.